Oh, you know what, Kenneth, let's go over here, and you can come
Good.
to my seat.
Actually, women, you just said, you walk around your phone.
Thank you, Jack. Could you look? I think we've got everybody in on the video, almost everybody.
Yeah, looks like it, yeah.
She's gonna start doing school. Everybody starts that. I'm on that. And he's just. She's doing school. I want to be 24.
Okay, the Verizon time says 6 o'clock, and the clock on the wall says 6 o'clock, so I'd like to call to order the April meeting of the Henry County Planning Commission. We will start with a roll call. Karen?
Jim Winnick,
Here?
Rachel Clark,
Here.
Dale Cole,
Here.
Elaine Beach,
Here.
Larry Drake, here, Marcia Gratner,
Here.
Eddie Gray, here, Bobby Plummer,
Here.
Tom Green is absent. You have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Everyone should have a copy of the minutes of the previous meeting, which would have actually been the February meeting. Anyone needs time to look at them, fine. If not, I will entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion to approve, seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. All approved. The next item on the agenda is discussion and possible changes to the zoning ordinance regarding lot size and width of parcels connected to a sewer system. This is some work that Aaron's been doing, so. Go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, so, presented this to the Middletown Council, the Spiceland Town Council, and the commissioners. This is the first opportunity I've had to talk to you guys, but I sent it out to you, actually sent it to you first, but we haven't had a chance to really discuss this. So what this boils down to was, in my office, Jody French behind me, she works in the office with me. We see and have seen over the years issues with R1 zoning, which tends to be in municipalities, and the lot size requirement currently under the current code is 0.6 acres for a residential dwelling. What we've seen happen in the past, instances where fires have burned homes, homes or there's been some kind of damage or they've deteriorated. And we've had to tell those folks because our code requires that anything that receives more than 50% loss has to be brought up to the current code. So we've seen issues with that. We've had issues with people not being able to develop on town lots because of the size restrictions, because most lots, and we'll get into that, most lots are smaller than that. And recently, kind of the more disturbing thing is we've had with appraisers who will contact us and somebody's trying to refinance their home or they're trying to sell a home. And one of the questions an appraiser will ask us is, obviously because the bank didn't want to loan anything on a structure unless it's good equity or good collateral, but they'll ask, if this structure were to suffer a catastrophic loss, could it be rebuilt? And we've had some instances where we've had to say no. People have scrambled. There's been some, luckily we've issued some letters that I think have helped. I don't know whether there's anybody who's actually not been able to get approved, but it has become an issue. So this was just anecdotally, we saw these things kind of popping up. You get it, a couple times a year, one here, one there. And so I wanted to investigate, how big an issue this was. And I was specifically focusing on R1 zoning where it was on a sewer. Because our code is very clear that if you're not on a sewer, if you're on a septic, you need at least 1.5 acres. So I wanted to see those communities, and we've got 9 communities that had sewer systems in those municipalities. What size those lots were, how many of those homes would be affected. So I got with Jody Brown, and she gave me all the information, lot sizes in those communities, along with which ones were, had homes. So I went through the list and compiled, and you guys have a list of that, showing that in those 9 municipalities that 1,687 of those lots, which turned out to be 86% or over 86%, would not meet our current code as it stands. So that meant that 86% of those homes potentially could have an issue with being rebuilt, could potentially have an issue with being refinanced. This doesn't take into account empty lots that cannot be developed. So I was just focusing on just those places where someone lived. Some communities were worse than others. Middletown, for instance, had 90% of the homes would have that issue. Sulphur Springs, it was 91%. So seeing that there was a problem, I wanted to see what that actual number, what would bring that down? What is a reasonable number for these lot sizes? So I went through and looked for patterns. Specifically, I think Moreland and Middletown were the two that stuck out the most because they had pretty solid repeated lot sizes in those communities. So, and I'm talking about lot sizes, but I'm also talking about lot widths as well. That's another issue because our code requires that those lots be 100 feet wide. And so in looking into it, I came up with a number that was at 0.1377 acres or 6,000 square feet. Seemed like a good number that would bring that down. We would go from 1,687 lots that could be rebuilt, or homes that could be rebuilt, to just 96. So we go from 86% down to 4.9%. And some of those lots, I would contend that those are some very small lots. I mean, we do have some lots that it's just the house that's there. So I'm not saying we need to bring everything down to 0, but that seemed to make the most sense. After crunching those numbers and figuring that out, it was suggested, maybe McKinnon, someone suggested, what does Knightstown and Newcastle do? Because they're not under our jurisdiction. So I contacted both those communities to see what their lot sizes were on sewer, and was pleasantly surprised to find out that it's basically what I kind of came up with and what I saw already existed in Moreland and Middletown as being on that kind of repeatable scale. So Newcastle was anywhere from, was around 7,500 square feet down to about 5,000 square feet. And their lot widths were from 50 to 60 feet wide. Nicetown had like what they called their historic lot size. So their older lots went down as low as 4,500 square feet, 45 feet wide. So they also had smaller side setbacks, and you'll notice we'll get into the code in a minute. I did alter the side setbacks a little bit on the R1, but their numbers were closer to 5 or 6 feet on side setbacks. I kept it at 10 feet, which is what we allowed into the more denser residential like R2 or R3. And I think 10 feet is still something that would be doable on a lot of these properties to be rebuilt. Going back and looking at a lot of the houses. And I mean, this boiled down to, I mean, the question always was, a couple of you on the BZA, if this were to come up, somebody's house burns down or somebody buys a lot, can't they go to the BZA and ask for a variance? And the answer is yes, they can. But the question is, should we be making them, especially when it's such a big discrepancy? It's hard, and my BZA members will know this, that they prefer to see something when it's closer to what the code says. So if you're going from 26,000 square feet down to 6,000 square feet, which is what a lot actually is, that's a pretty big discrepancy, and that's hard for somebody to say, yeah, it's okay to make that big of a change. So yes, I mean, we could today, you guys don't have to take any action, and there's still the possibility that if myself or Bobby's house burns to the ground, or the 4 members of the Newcastle, the Middletown Council, their house is burned, that would certainly go to BZA and say, look, this house has been here for 150 years, please let me rebuild where it was. And chances are they're probably going to approve it. But we should have a code, in my opinion, we should have a code that reflects reality. I see no real reason why this size exists. I think it was put in there in place at a time when not just us, but nationwide, we were looking at subdivisions and bigger lots, and that's how they were looking, and people were less concerned with small towns and cities. And I think that number was put in there based on that idea and not really a reflection of what we have. I think a lot of people are going to move back into the small towns and want to keep that density that we already have that exists. So that being said, I provided you with a sample. Again, this is just some suggestions that I had of some changes, fairly minor changes, mostly some deletions and a few alterations in the sizes. And the point is too that this is actually making things less restrictive. So we're not actually putting more restrictions on. We're actually making it easier for people to rebuild or build homes. And this also has the added benefit could also loosen up our regulations for what are called accessory dwelling units, but most people would call a granny flat, a mother-in-law suite, something like that. So a separate residence on the same parcel. Our code only allows 1 dwelling per parcel. But this would kind of take that and allow use that 6,000 square feet as sort of the metric to determine whether or not you could have more than one on a lot. So if you've got 6,000 square feet, you can have one. Essentially, if you had an additional 6,000, you could convert that garage into a mother-in-law suite. And so you'll see, I mean, the page, I've given you some copies here, we read it out, page 21 and 29. We're just removing some of the density language in R1, R2, R3 districts. This is not really how we would do it now anyway. It just cleans it up and makes the next page is a little bit easier to understand. Page 30, again, would free up. So by adding dwelling multifamily with sewer, we don't allow any multifamily dwelling unless it's on sewer anyway. So adding with sewer, but also allowing that to be a permissible use in R2 and R1, provided they have the lot square footage. Page 31, again, just changes that lot square footage down to 6,000 square feet. And essentially using that as the benchmark for, if you have more than 6,000 square feet, you can add additional density. Changing the lot width to 50 feet instead of the, I'm sorry, it was 150 feet on R1, 100 feet on R, oh no, that's septic, I apologize. It was 100 feet before, this moves it down to 50 feet. Adding the word primary, so basing the building size on the primary house so that we're not putting a size restriction on, again, those like mother-in-law suites, so that we could do the garage conversion for traditional family. Bringing the road setback, that's another thing that I took a look at. Most of our communities, the R1 homes, these old homes are closer to the street. So bringing R1 in line with what we were already allowing in R2 and R3. A lot of studies have been done that talk about that actually, especially in like a town or something, that actually is safer to have homes closer to the street than it is to have them back off the street, puts more eyes on the road and on the sidewalk, makes it less likely actually for someone to break into a home if there's more visibility. So homes that actually are closer to the sidewalk, closer to the roads, tend to be safer than something that's set back where there's ability for somebody to kind of sneak in and that kind of thing. And then another thing, just kind of adding in, this is sort of separate from this conversation, but also part of it. We had the only way that you could have an apartment in a local business or general business district was if above the building, was if you worked in the business. So whether you were the owner who operated the business below or as an employee. Frankly, we have businesses, Middletown comes to mind, where they have the business on the first floor and they have apartments above, wouldn't be in compliance with the code. So, I mean, I think we want to, then there's other, Moreland's got the old stores, Bison's got an old store, Louisville has also got, some storefronts that have space above that can be used for apartments. And I think we would want to encourage that space to be used. So this would, on page 39 and 59, basically addresses that, makes it a permissible use for the apartment based on the fact that as long as the apartments are still an accessory use to the primary business, so you still want that business on the down, the bottom floor, the apartment is just an accessory use, so we're not converting, without going through a rezone, we're not converting a business building into all apartments. This would still just allow it to be an accessory use and comply with the R3 districts. Really, the only thing that we're kind of adjusting there is just taking out that stipulation that you have to work in the business. Now it can be essentially open to anybody to it. So that's just some suggestions that I've got. Then I presented to the commissioners. I presented this also to, I've sent this out to the realtors and some surveyors and folks in that industry. So far, I've not really heard anybody that's having any concerns or issues with the proposal. But again, at the end of the day, it's up to the planning commission and the commissioners as to whether or not you want to move forward with making some changes, whether it's these or
Anyone have any questions on the commission for Derek?
When you polled the realtors, did they have any other suggestions or concerns other than this particular one we were addressing?
Well, I haven't asked for other suggestions, but as you know, I mean, we continue to hear from realtors that we have a housing shortage. So I don't know that this is necessarily gonna solve that, but I can say that there are lots in these communities that can be developed, that are sitting there that those communities they're not getting tax revenue off of, they're not getting water, sewer, electric revenue off of, and retail follows rooftops. So the more homes that you can have in a general area, the more likely you're gonna have businesses also to serve those people. So to answer your point, I don't have any other suggestions from realtors that they've made me aware of, but I do think that this is something that can at least help, but it's not necessary. This isn't a silver bullet by any means. We're not going to make this change and suddenly everybody's building houses everywhere. But at least we don't backslide as we lose houses, and it opens up the possibility of developing some of those vacant lots. I know that in Spiceland, we've got probably about 6 lots over the last 4 or 5 years where houses have either had been torn down because they were too far gone, or there have been fires that are just vacant lots now.
I just want to say I commend you because you did a lot of work and study and research on this, so it helps us try to make more informed decisions. So thank you.
I have a question. What town councils did you work with? Did you get feedback from them as well at Middletown? Or?
Yeah, I mean, they were open. I mean, right now, the only places, I haven't didn't go around to other than Middletown and Spiceland. That business with both of those others and then the commissioners. But no, I've not gone around and spoke to other town councils about this. I can't imagine, I guess I could be wrong, but I wouldn't think that there would be an objection. Again, I mean, it only benefits them to have, number one, to keep the residents they've got and to allow for additional possibility of having more residents. Because we're not, again, and we'll go back, we're not talking about, we're not actually talking about shrinking, we're not actually talking about making any of these communities more dense than what they are. We're simply saying, this is the reality. Let's make the code reflect the reality. It's not like suddenly now that those lots are there that we're going to have, that people are going to be, this is going to make it more dense than what it is.
On this spreadsheet, are these the towns for which they have selected the PC to be their zoning entity to oversee? I forgot, I read that a couple of years ago. The ones you listed are the ones that were basically responsible for doing their zoning or making decisions on.
Yeah, so what this reflects is these are ones that are under your jurisdiction and that they have a sewer system. The only thing that would not be on here that would fall under having a sewer would be, I believe Kennard has their own sewer. They are not under your jurisdiction. And Shirley, I'm not sure if Shirley has a sewer or not, but they're not under your jurisdiction either. Caddis, Kennard, Greensboro are not under your jurisdiction. Neither's Blunsville is, but they don't have a sewer. So this is just those communities that have, because I'm not advocating that we change this on anything that would that would need a septic system. Because frankly, we actually have, on the other end of the spectrum, we have issues in some unincorporated areas such as Graysville, New Lisbon, Honey Creek, Ogden, where they have dense homes. And so a lot of them were platted out the same sizes as these towns we're talking about. They don't have sewer. And so what we're seeing in those communities is issues with, because you essentially have your sewer right next to your neighbor's well, and there are issues, especially in a place like Graysville, which is Blue River and has a very high water table. There's been issues for years about that. We're not advocating doing anything to those communities. Those communities aren't on sewer, and frankly, really needs to happen if they need sewer, but more than likely what's going to happen in those communities, most of them, like I said, are unincorporated, is that through time and attrition, they will lose homes and they will have to consolidate into bigger lots that allow sewer over time or septic over time, unless the sewer is ever provided to them. So in those instances, I am saying, as opposed to what we're talking about with sewer, that those communities probably do need to have larger lots, and we probably do need to kind of hold the ground and say, sorry that your house burnt down, but the code is this, and there's a reason, there's a health reason for that. This, I don't know, the only real reason that's even been proposed to me of why we want to continue to have larger lots in these towns that I'm talking about, would just be possibly because of fire issues. But I would contend that, especially if there's been a fire, that when a new structure is going to be built, it's going to be built which a lot of these are very old homes, it's going to be built to current building code requirements, which are going to be safer as far as fire. It's going to be built probably out of safer material. And we have more modern fire protection equipment. So I don't know that a fire issue, and that was part of the reason why I didn't really want to shrink that side setback as much. Still keeping, potentially, if you have a 10-foot setback from my house and 10-foot setback from my neighbors, mine is not, mine is a lot closer than that. But if we keep that, then you have a 20-foot distance that would allow both the free access between properties, but also as a fire kind of buffer area. That's the only thing that's been possibly mentioned to me as to why we would continue to keep the 0.6 acres, is that over time you lose these houses, they're farther apart, but I don't know that to me, I don't know that that's a real issue.
When there's a sewer or septic issue or problem, does the health department then get involved?
Yes, yeah. If people can get their water tested, their wells tested, to find out if there's human waste in their well. If there's water running on the ground, the health department sometimes will go out and check that, and has found sewer in ditches running next to people's homes or potholes in the road. So yes, that's who, if there's a septic issue, the health department handles that. If this is something that you would be interested in, the next steps would be a public hearing. So this is just like a zoning change, only it's a zoning ordinance, language amendment, similar to what we did with the wireless communication towers not too long ago. So it's the same type of idea, where if this was something you wanted to move forward with, it would be published in the newspaper to have a public hearing at whatever point you want to set that up. You would hold a public hearing, and then you could, if you want to, you could change it based on that or whatever. And then if you want to, you could send that language on to the commissioners who would have final say as to whether you want to change that.
I guess at this point, if there's people, planning commissioners are interested in having a public meeting, I suppose we need a motion to hold that, and we need to set a date for that at this time, or just state that we want to have a public meeting some point in the future.
I mean, that's up to you. I mean, depending on it could be prepared and ready for May. If you want to have a meeting in May, it can be ready for your next meeting. If you want to hold off, then that's fine. But it could be ready. You could have a public hearing.
Yes, Dale.
Madam Chair, I would like to make a motion that we put this on hold until June. I don't think we have enough time between now and May. I think the idea is good. I think there's a lot of what you said, a lot of, a lot of meat in this, but I think it's something that we really need to evaluate before we go ahead.
So are you making an formal motion, Dale, that we
Yeah.
hold a public meeting and not until June?
Right.
Okay. Any a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, Rachel second. Motion's been made, seconded, any further discussion? Hearing none, I don't think we need a roll call, as the general. I will take an aye for, those who approve the motion.
Maybe we do need a, you want to, let's do a roll call.
Let's do a roll call, because we're not going
Right, so the motion is to schedule a public hearing to further discuss what's been presented in June.
Would be our June meeting.
Potentially take action.
If it's the June meeting, that's the 17th.
Jim Winning,
Aye.
Rachel,
Aye.
Dale Cole,
Aye.
William Beach,
Aye.
Larry Brady, Marcia Bratner,
Aye.
Kenny Gregg, Bobby Clemmer.
I think we can do it in May, is my explanation.
Okay, motion passed. We'll wait till advertise that in this June meeting. Okay, did you want to talk a little bit about this item as well?
Yes, because of,
Point?
yep. And I don't know, I mean, we could consider this some unfinished business or, I don't know. But I'll, and I just want to touch on this quickly. So I will, I sent you all the subdivision control ordinance and something from the Indiana chapter of the American Planning Association, their citizen planner's guide on subdivision control ordinances. So where this comes about, and I will say, to be honest with you, this was kind of the last thing that I messed with, partly because we've never had anyone, if I've been here, it's really with no one through the Rachel, and I think Adam maybe had one or two folks who want to do a subdivision as a what we would probably consider a subdivision of multiple lots and roads and things like that. So we never really messed with it, never really got too far into it, but through training and other things, you know, I kind of looked back at our ordinance, and I think, frankly, we've kind of been doing things wrong as far as the subdivision of land. I was sort of told when I came in that we've always sort of allowed, essentially by past precedent or just kind of practice, we've allowed people to split off property to build a home, provided that it met the standards of an acre and a half, 150 feet of road frontage, or normally where our splits would be out in the county. So we've kind of carried on that where we just made sure that people had lots that met the minimum standard requirements and sort of let them do one split. In reality, that's not what our code says. My interpretation of it is that our code says that anytime someone subdivides land, unless it's a situation where it is both remaining parcels are going to be more than 20 acres, that it should go through a process. We have a minor subdivision, which is four lots or less, that has no public improvements, as in no roads, no sidewalks, or a major, which is more than 5 lots, or has public improvements. I think, you know, this is something that the Planning Commission should take a look at, as far as, you know, obviously take a look and see if you agree with how I'm interpreting what a minor subdivision is, which would include splitting off even just one lot. There's a process that spells out which requires essentially somebody coming to the Planning Commission or a tech review meeting to get approval to split off those lots to make sure that they're buildable. There's not drainage issues, there's not other type of issues. So either, you know, in my opinion, the Planning Commission needs to take a look and we need to say, find that time in which we say, okay, boom, this is how we're going to do it going forward, and make sure that everything is in place to take care of that. Or the ordinance needs to reflect, again, going back to kind of what we're doing. And if that's the case, then, you know, it needs to be changed. It needs to say that. So I'm not proposing anything today. I just wanted to give you guys this information. This was next project I started to look into, subdividing of land is wholly under the purview of the planning commission. Now, and you'll find as you read through this, Indiana code essentially allows you to subdivide your land. You can't stop someone from subdividing their land. What you can do is stop them from being able to build on a lot if it's not going through your process. I can cut off 0.0002 acres out of my house, have the surveyor write it up and take it down to the recorder's office and have it recorded, and you guys can't stop me from doing it. My understanding is, even if I went out though and did the same thing with 1.5 acres and 150 feet of road frontage, and then go to build a house, you could say, whoa, no, your lot's the right size, but you didn't come to us, you didn't go through this process that's required. A lot of communities also kind of, I don't want to say do a workaround, but they get an agreement with the recorder that no subdivisions will be allowed to be recorded unless it's stamped off by the planning commission. And when I say subdivisions, again, I'm talking about subdividing of just one piece of land. And also sometimes there's a little bit of language in the professional surveyors that they follow whatever local rules are established, or they can lose their license. So a lot of times communities will tell surveyors, you don't survey and record anything until you've got our stamp on your survey. And they'll essentially, the ones that want to keep their license will do that. So I'm putting this out there as just something to start looking at and consider. And as far as right now, conversations with Jim about, we're still kind of continuing down until you guys have a chance to kind of weigh in on how you interpret this, what you want to do going forward. Essentially just moving forward like we always have. So if somebody comes in and they're wanting to split something off and they want to build a house, then right now, as long as it meets the lot size, we're sort of allowing that. But I'm saying at some point, to me, it needs to be addressed.
So my understanding that on the initial lot size, you have to have a minimum of 20 acres, and then you could subdivide one house off of that 20 acres, is that correct?
Well, the way it was explained to me is that it's in order for them not to go to the planning commission, that both lots would have to remain at least 20 acres. As in, you could split a 40-acre parcel into two 20-acre parcels without going through the process. But if you have a 20-acre parcel and split off 1.5 acres, that 1.5 acres should be approved through the planning commission because that split should be approved because now you have essentially a remainder. So you have something, one of the lots or one of the parcels will be less than. I had some good conversations with my counterpart over in Hancock County, and that's one thing too, where this, especially since this is kind of a big thing, it's a whole section of the code that we really don't mess with. It might be a good idea to get some other people in the communities that have done this, and also some training. The woman who actually wrote this, I know her pretty well, Deb Lazar, I think that's how you say her name, and may be able to get her or somebody else to come in and give a little training, maybe a little brief training on what all subdivisions are, maybe even somebody who could take a look and kind of confirm, or maybe say I'm reading the ordinance wrong, maybe we have in there right order. To get somebody a different set of eyes, maybe look at the ordinance and say, this is how you're supposed to be doing it. So that would be my suggestion, is that maybe look into someone to come in, do some training, and maybe somebody else who's community, like Hancock County or some of these other communities that have a lot more experience with doing this.
Comments? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, on subdivision, in 5 acres that you get to build a house, or what's a 5 acre?
I don't know where that's not in our ordinance. I know people say that a lot. I don't know where that comes from. Our ordinance says on a sewer, it's 1.5 acres with 150 feet of road frontage. That's the minimum requirement to build a house on anything that's on septic. Forgive me if I keep switching back from sewer and septic. I don't know where the 5 acres, it's not in the current code. It may have been something at a different time.
Could it be just that division, wherever that moves, whoever owns that, that's a requirement, it's gotta be 5 acres, that's where it comes from.
Maybe. And that may have been a practice too. I mean, that's entirely possible. I mean, it's possible that was just a practice that the previous planning commission, the previous zoning administrators did, and it was never part of the code. Kind of like what I'm saying, that basically it was kind of passed down to me, this is how we do this, and I never really messed a whole lot with it as long as they met the requirements. So it's possible that previous planning commission, previous zoning administrators said, we want you to have 5 acres. And
I've always heard of 5 acres. I've always heard of 5 acres. You had to have 5 acres to build.
I've never seen anything that says that.
I know, I mean, it's just interesting that we've always heard, I mean, I've always heard 5 acres.
I've seen some discussion in the minutes. I've never seen where that was.
Where's that
approved
changed?
or anything. So
So it's 1.5
1.5 is the minimum.
on septic.
On septic is the minimum, with 150 feet of road frontage. And to be honest, there are situations, and that's still provided you need a septic on it. You could have 1.5 acres, and if the health department doesn't sign off on septic, then you still can't build.
Or you spend $30,000 on one of those really fancy ones that's
Yes.
small.
Yeah.
Personal experience.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you've been through that. So, and they have expressed to me in the past that, they frankly might be more open to that lot size being even a little bit bigger. Because what you have in some of those situations is somebody did the 1.5 acres and they put their septic, and then they build a barn, and they build another barn. They got a driveway here, and they put the pool here, and their septic system fails, and they filled up their property with, they run into issues with where to put them. Some communities, I think, have a requirement essentially that you do, you set aside land for a backup system if you need to. So essentially, you can only build so much on your, so you lay out, here's where my septic is. In case that fails, here's where the other one would go, and you wouldn't be allowed to build there. I think that's a bit much maybe for us, but going through this process, I think could solve some of those type of problems ahead of time. If people are required to make sure that the property's got good drainage and that the septic and everything can go on before they even split it or buy it or whatever, then that may solve some future issues from that.
Well, I would suggest this is something that we continue to look at in the future. We're not going to set any dates to do anything at this time, but certainly take it into consideration. I appreciate your attention. We might have a potential issue here. So, with that, we're going to go into unfinished business. None that I know of, other than, did you want to update us on the Middleton situation that we voted on in our last meeting?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me that. In case you didn't see it in the newspaper, so at the last meeting, you sent no recommendation to the Middletown Town Council on Kelly Middleton's property. That was the one that was going to have, she wanted to have it rezoned to rural residential so that she could market it as a property where horses could be. Middletown took that up. What they ended up doing was, and they carried over two meetings, and my understanding is they took some additional public comment as well. They put a stipulation on it. They did approve it, but they put a stipulation on it that it could only be horses. So and that was put in with the deed and everything. It could only be horses. They put a maximum of 5 horses. and that they had to follow the town rules, which, and we discussed this a little bit when we had our hearing, and I think O'Neill was trying to hit on it. And it wasn't until later I went back and actually drew out, because the town required it, and I can't even remember what the number was, but it's I think 300 feet from any residential property. When I drew it out, because that, if you recall, that thing was surrounded by residential properties, it ended up that there was only like 1.8 acres of that property at the very bottom, in the very center, where they could actually meet the code requirement that would allow livestock to be kept, because it included the pens and everything else. So even though it doesn't specifically say the animals have to stay, it essentially says everything that keeps the animals has to stay that far away. So once you looked at that, so really, I mean, at the end of the day, they did do the rezone, but I'm not sure who's gonna buy a property to, I mean, 1.8 acres is maybe enough room to keep maybe one, maybe two horses. I don't know. And you're gonna have to, there's not gonna be much room for them to be able to graze, especially if you've got a barn and everything else. So I think it really limited, I think it didn't actually accomplish what she wanted, but maybe somebody who has one horse will love it and want to do it. But that was brought up. They were aware of that. They had a visual that showed exactly where that was. That is not on us, and I made it very clear, that's not on us to enforce. That's a town ordinance. So if somebody buys it and they got horses that are right next to somebody's property line or house, then that's Middletown's issue, not the planning commission's. So they did approve it.
Thank you, Darren. With that, we'll move on into new business. Darren?
Yeah, so I have a letter to present to the planning commission. States, dear planning commission commissioners, it is with a great deal of sadness that I must inform you that I have accepted an offer of employment elsewhere and must resign my position as Henry County zoning administrator. April 23rd will be my last full day physically in the office. I'll be using accrued sick time for the weeks of April 19th and May 3rd. I will physically visit the office on May 7th to pick up my belongings at the Lee County owned property. I have accrued 58 hours of comp time, 2 flex days, and 1 holiday flex day, totaling, I also will be eligible for my 2 weeks vacation for 2021. In total, I'm asking the county to pay out the earned 85 hours of flex time and 70 hours of vacation time. This money will be paid out of the zoning administrator's salary line item. I've confirmed the eligibility of these requests with the Human Resources Department. It's been an honor to have worked for you. I've never had a better set of bosses or a job that was more rewarding. I'll still be around to help with the transition and look forward to working with all of you again in other capacities. If you don't mind, I got another little statement I'd like to read. So I had a different statement prepared when thinking about this meeting. I was going to talk about what I've learned over the last 6 years. Going to talk about things that maybe are wrong with the county and how I might think that they should be fixed. But it occurred to me that none of this has ever really been about me. I don't have a huge list of accomplishments to leave on, because that was never the point. My job, as I saw it, was to make your jobs easier, and I hope I've done that. My job was to be your daily representative, to run your office, interpret and enforce your code, prep your meetings, and make sure you had all the information you needed to make hard decisions. There are things I wish I'd done differently, but I can honestly say that I believe that I did my best to serve this board. I'm proud of the office that we ran, first with Katie and now with Jody. We treated everyone who came in with the respect they deserved. Most people left our office either happy or at least with new options, or at the very least an understanding of the code and why they need to follow it. I hope that you feel that I have represented you both well, both with the public and within county government. The legacy that I would like to leave is the one of professionalism. One of my top priorities has been to make sure that you have the knowledge to run productive meetings and to come up with just, defensible decisions. I think you have accomplished that even under the most difficult of circumstances, and that you stand as an example to other boards in Henry County. I want to thank you for allowing me to work for you and our community. Since I've started, I've worked for 19 different planning commission members and 9 different board of zoning appeals members. The only people who currently serving who have been here longer than me are Pauline and Dale on the planning commission and Kathy Hamilton on the BZA. I've enjoyed getting to know each of you and look forward to working with you in different capacities in the future. Just want to let you know. Thank you, Rachel. Rachel asked if I was going to cry. It's been an honor.
Speaking for myself, and I'll give everybody else an opportunity to do the same, I want to thank Darren for his many years of service. I've obviously been on this board a very short time, and I was very impressed with the information and preparation that he took in undertaking each case, and the information he forwarded on us, so we had everything that we needed to make an informed decision. So, that, Darren, I'm certainly going to miss you, and I'm sorry to see this work out this way, but thank you for your time.
I'll just say, I think what you're going to in your future job, and I'm glad to say that you had an opportunity to advance. So in that sense, it's a good thing. And we have lost. And because the time that you put in to seeing that things are run the way they should, we're kept up to date, will be hard for someone else to fill.
Well, I just say that Henry County is losing a good man. I was part of the committee that hired Darren. And when I first met Darren several years ago, as I said before, he used to be a little fat man. But he's grown up. Growing up, he got whiskers in. But he's a little bit reluctant to really say what's taken place. But if you look back over the 6 years that he's been involved, a lot has been accomplished with what's taking place here with the committee and the elected officers. But I'm sure there's somebody out there that'll jump right in, and I don't know if they're going to have some big shoes to fill. I can tell them that. Because as he said, he has always tried to give us the information that we need and the education also. So I just want to say, wish you well, Darren. I hate that it's coming about this day, but on the other hand, you have to do what you got to do, brother.
I just want to say that, wow,
Yeah, they're very loud.
you steal ones. It has definitely been an honor, absolute honor to work with you, Darren. When I kind of started this, I was completely clueless, and I can say that at any point if I ever came not having an understanding, it was my own fault, because the amount of information that you give us, and it's broad and from every objective that you can look at, just to make sure that we are all making informed decisions the best that we can. And I've said on many boards, and I don't know that that has ever been the situation in any other board that I've been a part of. So huge appreciation for that. I know you've kind of helped us all grow. I don't know that there's any other board, as you talk about the multiple members. I think everybody here has been able to catch up to speed quickly, get feeling that they've been part of this for a long time, and every bit of that is due to you. So thank you again for that. We are absolutely going to miss you. Hopefully you hate your job.
That was sweet in a way, to tell him I hope he hates his job. That's sort of sweet.
One thing about Darren, his door was always open. you got a problem or you wanna see a piece of property or whatever, just come on in, we'll look it up and see what you find. So I hope your new position you're going to, you're gonna like it. If you don't, I think the door will be open to come back. But, well done.
Thank you for taking me under your wing in the short time that I've been on the planning commission, but you made me feel welcome and you really went through everything, so I could easily understand it. I really appreciate that.
When I came on there in January 2019, I volunteered for 9 different committees to be liaison on, dummy me. But I felt like this one was one that you, like Marcia said, took under the wings and sit down and educated me, and got me up to speed. Then I served on the board of aviation commissioners and drowned. Not because of Ed, it just was not my baby. We were going through airport stuff and aviation stuff, which I had very little knowledge, except I flew a few times in my life. Prepared me, you prepared me with the information, including tonight. So we appreciate that very much. You educated us so we can make wise decisions.
I guess I'll be last. Again, I'm new to the planning commission and to the commissioner's office. I do appreciate, Darren, all your hard work that you've put in over the years and educating me. You came to me with the one thing in January and we discussed it. And I appreciate the understanding because I had no clue in the education that you have provided. I wish you the best in whatever endeavors. I'm assuming you're not moving Henry County, you're staying in Spiceland.
No, we're still planning to stay.
So you will be still in Henry County. You're always welcome here in the courthouse. And I appreciate all your hard work. I wish you nothing but the best.
I would like to chime in a little bit. I've been able to represent the planning commission for the 6 years prior to that, or Darren being here, and he's just wonderful to work with, and he's so thorough and he's so thoughtful, and all of his questions are just so on point. And I don't represent him and him as the client. I represent you all, but to work with him for those 6 years has been, just really, really impressive, and just see him grow in this position, and just exciting things ahead too. So, got to know each other a little bit over those 6 years. So it's been a good ride, and we wish you all the best as you move forward.
The secret is most of you are new, so you don't realize how crappy I was when I started.
Not true.
But we saw the future.
Actually, did you see, was it the Middletown paper that had an old picture of you in it recently?
Oh, was it in today's paper?
Was it today's paper?
It was in today's paper.
Oh.
It was an older picture. I'll just say pre-beard, pre-long hair. And
I'm not going to
yeah, it was in the Middletown, yeah. I was like, actually, Commissioner Dellner held that up and he goes,
Is this guy?
that's Darren. And I said, yeah.
Well, it's the only thing that's kept me going for 6 years. I have to change my looks every 2 years so that I can stay safe going long.
I don't know if they're taking public comments, but I mean.
Yeah, I was gonna say, unless, Sean says I can, I'd like to open that to the general public, because I know you worked with them for many years as well.
In my 8 years as commissioner, I saw the role of the planning administrator change quite a bit. I thought that Rachel Connor did a great job of ratcheting up to a professional level. Honestly, when Darren came in, I thought he's got a tough act to follow. The truth is that Darren has taken it up several stages beyond what Rachel did. His thoroughness in researching issues and getting background information and multiple points of view from other parts of the state and members of the Planning Commission has been absolutely commendable. If you did not have knowledge, you could not tell what point of view was being presented, even on controversial issues like wind and solar. You have done a fantastic job at maintaining the professionalism of your position
and of keeping all of us who served in that planning commission during your time informed and helping us make important decisions. I thank you very much, and I wish you well in your new position.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we have a decision to make here. Do we let him go or do we keep him? I will entertain a motion one way or the other.
I'll move that we accept his, letter and also with the request every time and so forth.
The compensation, okay.
I second that.
And I'll second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? I guess we're gonna let you go, Darren. Gonna miss you now. Thank you. With that, I don't believe we have anything else on the agenda this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Lincoln, all in favor? Aye. Adjourn.
Everybody for a cuss word.
Yeah.